Well, we start this morning with something that is challenging for families, but yet can be a positive and sensible choice for many, and that's bankruptcy. It's a choice many more people are considering to move forward in life without worrying about financial pressures. Finding the right bankruptcy attorney who is there for their client every step of the way is a major step as we get into the fresh financial start.
With Kevin Heupel, when he started Heupel Law, he made a pledge to his clients that they would receive personal attention from start to finish. Kevin wanted to make sure that all of your questions get answered and that your case gets filed in a timely manner. Nobody wants to file bankruptcy, but it helps to have an experienced, knowledgeable attorney and an accountant in your corner who cares.
Yes, it does. Kevin Heupel joins us for the first time today to answer some of the questions you may have about bankruptcy and the solutions you have available by filing. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You know, we hear bankruptcy, and there's such a stigma about that. But what is the reality?
You know, the reality is with bankruptcy, it's usually the best option to get out of a debt situation. Bankruptcy eliminates credit card debt, medical bills, payday loans, line of credit, overdraft fees, taxes older than 3 years. Other options out there don't do that. And the thing about bankruptcy, you get a discharge, meaning you don't have to pay it later. And when you get that discharge, the biggest benefit is that you do get to rebuild your credit right away. You can reestablish a credit score in the 700s, and that's where the stigma comes from, is people think, oh, I filed bankruptcy, I'll never get credit again, can't buy a car, can't buy a home. But the reality is once the debt's cleared away, you can rebuild, and you can be in a better financial situation after the bankruptcy.
You know, and thank you for raising the awareness of that, because I think everything we had always heard in the past was, oh man, if you file bankruptcy, your credit is ruined for the rest of your life. But that's obviously not the case. So what are some warning signs for people out there that maybe bankruptcy might be a good option?
The biggest indicator is the amount of unsecured debt that you have to your annual income. So if your unsecured debt, I'm talking credit cards, medical bills, loans, is more than a third of your annual income, at that point you have lost the ability to ever repay the debt. When it's at a third, you'll pay it for the rest of your life, but you'll never pay it off. When it starts creeping above a third, that's when you're a bankruptcy candidate, because at that point you'll never pay it off.
You know, we always hear about the credit counseling and debt consolidation. Take that versus bankruptcy, pros, cons, differences?
Major differences with all three. Credit counseling is legitimate. It actually is a class that you have to do before you can file a bankruptcy. And what you do during this program is you combine your debt scenario together and you look to see if you could pay it off in a 5 to 7 year range. And that's where that 1/3 comes in. Because if your unsecured debt is at 1/3 or greater, you won't be able to afford the payments. You know, the reason why is because most people live within their means when it comes to housing, utilities, food, clothing. But it's that unsecured debt that you cannot control, and that's where it gets beyond them. So once it's above the third, credit counseling doesn't work. Credit counseling doesn't work unless you only have credit cards. So if you have medical bill debt or you have a repossessed vehicle that they're coming after the deficiency for, credit counseling can't do anything for that. So it can be effective if the debt is small, but if it's beyond credit card or more than a third,
forget it.
It won't help you. Debt negotiation, that's different. What they're doing is you come into them and they say, look, stop paying your debts, pay us, we're going to build up a bank of money, and then we're going to go out and we're going to try to negotiate down the amount you owe. And usually they try to shoot for 50 cents on the dollar, because when a debt gets sold to a collection agency, they're buying it for about 40 cents on the dollar. But not all creditors will negotiate. And the other problem is while you're in that, you're not paying any of your debt, so your credit really tanks. And the problem is, say they were successful and they paid off all the debt. When you do that, you're not allowed to rebuild your credit. The damage is done. You know, you've already destroyed it, where bankruptcy allows you to rebuild. And the other problem with debt consolidation is you have no legal protection during the process. Creditors will sue you, they'll get a judgment, and they can garnish up to 25% of your wages.
Wow.
Once you're in bankruptcy, you're protected. No more lawsuits, no more collection efforts, no more garnishments.
Very important to know it. So I guess there are two types of bankruptcies, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. how do you know which one is best for you if you want to go down that road?
You know, it depends a lot on your debt scenario. If you have a lot of unsecured debt, but you're good with your car payments and you want to keep your car, and you're making your house payment and you want to keep your car, Chapter 7 is probably the best, because you know that's another myth about Chapter 7 is people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my car, and you don't. You know, you just keep paying for those things and you keep them. So in a 7, what you can do is you can wipe out that credit card debt, keep your home, keep your house.
Wow, that's good.
The kicker is it is based on income and family size. If you're a single person in Colorado, your median income is $46,000. If you make less than that a year, you're automatically eligible. If you're over, we do a thing called the means test to see if we bring you under. And if you don't become eligible that way, then you're in a Chapter 13. And the Chapter 13, they call that the repayment. And some people think, well, that's where you got to repay all my debt. I can't afford to pay it, so how can I afford a 13? You actually don't. In a 13, you pay what you call your disposable income. Sometimes that can be $100 a month is what you're paying.
So if someone is falling really behind on their bills, what's the urgency for bankruptcy?
The urgency for bankruptcy is when the creditor starts coming after you to collect. You know, when you're starting to get those calls that they're going to refer it to an attorney and sue you. Because once they have a judgment against you, they can garnish your bank account without notice. They can garnish 25% of your wages.
You know, we could sit here and talk for hours about this. This is so fascinating. Unfortunately, we've only got about 45 seconds left. How do you pick? What does a person look for when they're trying to pick the right bankruptcy attorney?
You know, the most important thing is an attorney who can answer your questions. You know, bankruptcy is complex. With the economy going down, you're seeing more attorneys get into it, but it doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So if the attorney cannot answer your questions, that's usually a sign. And then really the most important thing is, do you like them, him or her? Do you get along with them? Is it somebody you can open up to and reveal what's going on in your financial world and not be ashamed? And that really is, because it's a personal relationship. We got to get along well. We got to work together, and if we do, we'll get you to a better future.
Wonderful. Well, I have one more question. Sure. What happens to my possessions, car or the house?
Homes are protected up to $60,000 of equity. In this current real estate market, that's not even an issue, so people can keep their home. Cars, $5,000 if you're single, $10,000 if you're married. If you have a car payment, typically you're upside down, no issue there. If you're over 60, those exemptions increase to $20,000 for cars and $90,000 for homes. Possessions, clothing, jewelry, there's exemptions for those. The reality is people don't lose that stuff. They get to keep the things that are important to them.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, it is important to meet with an attorney when filing a Chapter 7 because most people who try and file themselves, guess what? They're unaware that money in their bank account and money owed from a tax return may not be exempt unless certain steps are taken. Call Kevin Heupel if you think bankruptcy is your only option. It may or may not be the path to financial security. Pick up the phone right now, 303-955-7570, or learn more about bankruptcy and Heupel law before you call at cobankruptcyhelp.com. You owe it to yourself to know all the answers in today's complex financial world before you take a step like bankruptcy. The number for Heupel law, once again, 303-955-7570. Heupel law paid for this segment.